ominous illumination. I lie there for a moment, disoriented, trying to remember where I am and why. Then it hits me. I'm in a psych ward, and my roommate, Tim, is sleeping in the adjacent bed. The room is silent, save for the soft hum of the ventilation system. I can hear Tim's slow, rhythmic breathing, a sign that he's in a deep sleep. I let out a quiet sigh of relief, realizing that I won't have to interact with him right now. As I lie there, the room seems to grow colder, and I pull the thin hospital blanket tighter around me. That's when I hear it, a faint whisper. It's so soft that I can't make out the words. I assume it's coming from one of the staff members outside my room discussing something with another patient. But then I realize that the voices are too close and too hushed to be outside my door. I turn my head slightly, straining to listen. The whispering is definitely coming from Tim's bed. He's talking in his sleep. I can't make out what he's saying, but the tone of his voice sends shivers down my spine. It's not the usual mumbled sleep talk. It's deliberate and hushed, like he's having a secret conversation. My unease deepens, and I debate whether I should wake him up or just try to ignore it. But before I can decide, Tim's voice grows louder and more distinct, and it becomes clear he's not asleep at all. Into the darkness. They can't help you here, he mutters, his voice lasted with an eerie, almost sing-song quality. I sit up in my bed, heart pounding. The room is still bathed in darkness, and the only source of light is the faint glow from the floor lamp. My eyes adjust, and I can just barely make out Tim's form in the bed next to mine. He's sitting up facing my direction, but his eyes are closed. Who are you talking to? I ask, my voice trembling. Tim doesn't respond. He continues to mutter incoherent phrases, a strange smile on his lips. It's as if he's in a trance. Fear grips me as I remember the stories about people with severe mental illnesses in places like this. What if Tim is dangerous? What if he's talking to some malevolent presence that I can't see? I reach for the call button to summon a nurse, but as I fumble for it, I accidentally knock over a small cup on the bedside table, and it crashes to the floor. The noise startles Tim, and he suddenly opens his eyes, locking them onto mine. His gaze is unsettling. His eyes are wide, and they seem to be staring through me, not at me. His lips part in a grotesque grin, revealing a row of teeth that appear unnaturally sharp. Come closer, he whispers, beckoning with a bony finger. They won't help you. Only I can save you. I'm frozen with terror, unable to move or speak. The room feels colder, and I can sense something unnatural in the air. The whispers that were once soft and indistinct now seem to surround me, closing in from all sides. Just as I feel like I can't take it anymore, the door to our room bursts open, flooding the room with light. A nurse rushes in, followed by a security guard. They quickly subdue Tim, who resists violently, and take him away. I'm left trembling in my bed, and the nurse assures me that everything will be okay. But I can't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of something truly sinister that night. Tim's words still haunt me, and I can't help but wonder what darkness he was inviting me into, and what he meant by, they won't help you. That night, I learned that sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that happen in the real world in the most unexpected of places. After the incident with Tim, I struggled to sleep. The psych ward was supposed to be a place of healing and safety, but the darkness that had engulfed my room that night left me on edge. I couldn't get Tim's eerie words out of my head. The following evening, after dinner, I found myself sitting in the day room, still shaken, by the previous night's events. The room was a grim space with mismatched furniture and flickering fluorescent lights. Most patients were engaged in their own world, their faces blank or twisted by inner turmoil. It was a place where pain and despair were palpable, an environment that seemed to amplify my own anxieties. As I tried to read a book to distract myself, I noticed a new arrival in the corner of the room. A tall, gaunt man with disheveled hair stood there, swaying slightly, like a scarecrow caught in an invisible breeze. His eyes were fixed on something only he could see, and his lips moved as if engaged in an endless conversation with the unseen. The atmosphere in the room grew tense as others seemed to notice his presence. A few patients exchanged worried glances, but most just averted their eyes and kept their distance. The man's disjointed mutterings created an eerie backdrop to an already unsettling setting. I couldn't help but feel a strange connection between this man and Tim from the previous night. Were they both conduits to some dark realm that I couldn't comprehend? The man's voice became more distinct as he approached, and his words sent chills down my spine. They're coming. You can't hide. No one can hide. My heart raced, and I tried to rationalize the situation. Perhaps this was just another patient in the throes of psychosis, but his words felt like an ominous warning, a message from a place beyond our understanding. The staff finally noticed the commotion and quickly moved to intervene. They guided the man back to his room, his manic laughter echoing through the corridor. The other patients returned to their own personal struggles, and the day room resumed its oppressive atmosphere. That night, I was moved to a different room, away from any unsettling encounters, but the fear that had taken root in my mind remained. I couldn't help but wonder about the true nature of this place and the eerie occurrences that seemed to be drawn to it. As the days passed, I encountered more disturbed individuals with unsettling stories of their own. Some claimed to hear whispers in the shadows, while others spoke of visions that tormented their waking hours. Each encounter left me more unsettled, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent was lurking within these walls. One evening, as I lay in my new room, the lights flickered and a shiver ran down my spine. In the darkness, I could hear faint whispers, just like the ones I'd heard from Tim and the gaunt man. They seemed to surround me, growing louder and more insistent, as if beckoning me into an abyss of madness. I clutched my blanket, paralyzed by fear. The whispers seemed to come from every direction, converging on me. I closed my eyes and tried to block them out, but the words were impossible to ignore. They're here. They've always been here. They want you too. In the pitch black room, I felt a presence, an unseen entity drawing nearer. My heart pounded, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I was no longer alone. The darkness pressed in on me, suffocating and malevolent. Just as I thought I would be consumed by the shadows, the lights flickered back to life, dispelling the oppressive darkness. I was alone, but the whispers lingered, haunting my thoughts. The psych ward, a place meant for healing, had become a nightmare. I couldn't help but wonder if the spirits of those who had suffered here still lingered, their voices crying out for release. Or perhaps, in the depths of despair, I had unlocked a doorway to something far more sinister than I could ever have imagined. I realized that the scariest stories are not confined to the realms of fiction. Sometimes the darkest terrors exist in the most unexpected places, and the lines between reality and the supernatural blur in ways that defy explanation. The days in the psych ward began to blur together, and the unnerving encounters persisted. I kept my distance from the other patients, fearing that their afflictions might somehow infect me. But no matter how hard I tried to block it all out, the unsettling presence continued to haunt me. One evening, as I lay in my dimly lit room, I felt a weight pressing down on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. I gasped for air, struggling to sit up, and that's when I saw her, a spectral figure hovering in the corner of the room. Her pallid face was distorted with anguish, her hollow eyes fixated on me. She seemed to be a young woman, her long dark hair flowing as if suspended in water. I couldn't move, paralyzed by fear and disbelief. This was no ordinary hallucination or trick of the mind. She emanated a sorrowful energy that clawed at my soul, urging me to understand her torment. The apparition slowly drifted closer, her gaze never leaving me. She seemed to be silently pleading, yearning to convey something I couldn't comprehend. The air grew cold, and a profound sense of dread enveloped me. I felt that I was on the precipice of a terrifying revelation. Suddenly, the ghostly figure let out a blood-curdling scream that shattered the silence of the room. The sound was inhuman, a torment born from an eternity of suffering. I clamped my hands over my ears, trying to block out the anguished wails, but the sound seemed to penetrate my very soul. As the scream continued, the room began to warp and twist around me. The walls closed in, and the ceiling seemed to lower, all while the specter's wailing intensified. I was trapped in a claustrophobic nightmare, unable to escape. Just when I thought I couldn't endure any more, the lights flickered and the room returned to its previous state. The ghostly woman had vanished, and the scream had dissipated, leaving me trembling and disoriented. I couldn't deny it any longer. The psych ward was not just a haven for those seeking help, it was a breeding ground for the supernatural. The boundaries between the living and the dead had become dangerously blurred, and I was caught in the crossfire. I reached out to the staff, desperate for answers, but they dismissed my claims as mere hallucinations brought on by my fragile mental state. They prescribed stronger medications, hoping to quell the visions that tormented me. But I knew the truth. The horrors I had witnessed were real, and they were not confined to the recesses of my mind. The spirits of those who had suffered in this place still clung to the walls, their anguish echoing through the halls. I dreaded the approach of each night, knowing that the psych ward held more secrets than I could fathom. The ghostly encounters became more frequent, and their messages grew increasingly sinister. I was not alone in this battle. The spirits of the tormented sought to draw me into their world, to share in their eternal suffering. I realized that my only chance of escaping this nightmare was to unravel the dark mysteries that had bound them to this place. As I delved deeper into the shadows of the psych ward, I uncovered a history of pain, betrayal, and unspeakable atrocities. The building itself seemed to hold the collective trauma of its inhabitants, a malevolent force that had festered for generations. With each revelation, I grew more afraid, but I also felt a growing determination to confront the malevolence that had taken hold of the psych ward. The spirits were not the only entities here, and I knew that I had to find a way to free them, and in doing so, free myself from the grip of this nightmarish realm. The psych ward had become a battleground between the living and the dead, and I was determined to emerge from this ordeal not as a victim, but as a warrior against the forces of darkness that threatened to consume us all. The days turned into weeks as I delved deeper into the grim history of the psych ward. The spirits grew more restless, and their haunting presence became a constant torment. I couldn't escape the feeling that they were leading me towards something, guiding me through a nightmarish maze of memories and suffering. One evening, as the moon cast an eerie glow on the ward, I received an unexpected visitor. A fellow patient, a frail woman with haunted eyes, approached me. She whispered, her voice trembling. "You've seen them too, haven't you? The lost souls that linger in this place." I nodded, relieved to find someone who shared my harrowing experiences. She introduced herself as Emily and explained that she had been in and out of the psych ward for years. She claimed to have a connection with the spirits, an ability to communicate with them. Emily's presence was both a blessing and a curse. She shared with me the tales of the patients who had suffered here, stories of pain, betrayal, and unspeakable cruelty. The psych ward had once been a place of suffering, where experiments on the mentally ill had taken a sinister turn. As Emily recounted these dark chapters of the psych ward's history, the spirits that haunted the place seemed to grow more agitated. Their manifestations became increasingly malevolent, and I found myself in a relentless battle against their sinister forces. I knew that if I were to survive this ordeal and help free the tormented souls, I needed to confront the source of their anguish. Emily believed that there was a hidden room deep within the psych ward, a room that held the key to the spirit's release. With Emily's guidance, we embarked on a treacherous journey through the shadowy corridors of the ward, searching for the elusive room. The spirits grew more aggressive, their wails and moans echoing through the halls. It was a race against time and the malevolent forces that sought to keep us from our goal. We encountered nightmarish apparitions and faced unspeakable horrors as we navigated the labyrinthine structure of the psych ward. It was as if the building itself had come to life, a malevolent entity determined to protect its secrets at any cost. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we stumbled upon a hidden door concealed behind a crumbling wall. With trembling hands, I pushed it open, revealing a room shrouded in darkness. The air was heavy with the weight of the past, and a sense of foreboding filled the chamber. As we entered the room, the spirits surrounded us, their anguished cries reaching a deafening crescendo. It was a moment of reckoning, a confrontation with the darkness that had held them captive for so long. In the dim light, we uncovered a series of journals and documents that detailed the unspeakable experiments that had taken place within these walls. The psych ward had been a house of horrors, a place where the vulnerable had been subjected to inhumane treatment. Emily and I knew that we had to release the spirits from their torment. We conducted a ritual, calling upon the forces of light to help guide them to the other side. The room seemed to tremble as the spirits' wails turned into mournful cries, and one by one they began to dissipate, their tortured souls finally finding peace. The psych ward itself seemed to sigh in relief, its malevolence slowly fading away. As the last spirit vanished, the room brightened, and a profound sense of tranquility washed over us. We had succeeded in our quest to free the tormented souls and cleanse the psych ward of its dark legacy. But as the last specter disappeared, Emily turned to me with a look of profound sadness. She whispered, "I can't leave this place. My connection to the spirits has bound me here. You must go and never look back." With a heavy heart, I left the psych ward, haunted by the memories of the horrors I had witnessed. The building itself seemed to sigh in relief, as if it had been waiting for this moment for centuries. As I stepped out into the world beyond, I couldn't help but wonder if the darkness that had plagued the psych ward would ever truly be vanquished. But one thing was certain. I had emerged from that nightmarish ordeal a changed person, forever marked by the terrors I had faced and the spirits I had set free.